It was not that long ago that Project Veritas unveiled undercover footage of CNN employees complaining about their jobs. Many people were lamenting the fact that they don't do real journalism anymore. One producer said they used to go on the ground. Now it's just panel after panel attacking Donald Trump. That's all they do. While CNN certainly is the worst, that's really what they've become. And this sentiment from the employees, which you've seen on video, has now reached the highest level. Chris Cuomo, who consistently brings in some of the highest ratings for CNN, recently came out on his radio show saying, quote, "I don't like what I do professionally," saying change had to come. He wasn't entirely sure what that meant, but that the hyperpartisan nature of how these networks operate is something he does not value. Very similar sentiment. CNN does not do journalism. Right now, their media reporters are probably complaining about Fox News, which is odd because Fox is just one network out of dozens. Look, I understand when anti-establishment personalities, populists, or conservatives will rag on the mainstream media. We're talking about dozens of networks, companies, major VC-funded programs. But it's strange to me when CNN just comes out and rags on Fox News all day. I get it. It's a cable channel. You don't like it. Many of us can talk about things other than CNN. But for now, because of Chris Cuomo, CNN is what we're going to focus on. A story came out from the New York Times written by Ben Smith, the former editor-in-chief of BuzzFeed News, talking about this trust people have in the Cuomo brothers, Governor Andrew Cuomo, as well as CNN host Chris Cuomo. And he brings up an interesting point. CNN is trying to be some kind of more authentic network. They're trying to chase after what makes YouTube work for people like me. That I'm just sitting here talking to you for as long as I need to about what I need to, stutters and stammering, all just in the mix if it's what happens. CNN is chasing after that. They end up becoming this weird, angry network that just talks about hyperpartisan nonsense. I think they're trying to pressure Chris Cuomo to be like Sean Hannity or Rachel Maddow. And I don't think he wants to do it. If someone isn't passionate about political issues, you can't force them to be. Now, that's just my speculation. But sure enough, it reaches a point where the ratings aren't good enough. And Chris Cuomo actually says, "I will never beat them," referring to Hannity and Maddow, perhaps signifying that he may either change his show, quit, who knows. But the sentiment is real. CNN is trash. Beyond this, I'm going to show you a bunch of stories showing that it's very difficult to trust media right now for a variety of reasons. Now, I get it. I'm media too. But this is the changing landscape. If you want to choose to trust me, you're allowed to. You can choose to trust CNN. But many of these major networks are playing politics. And because of the amount of money involved, they owe favors and they use those favors. But they're also no longer interested in telling you the truth. They don't want to give you the core facts. They want to spin a tale to get clicks. Let's break this down, and we'll start with a story about Chris Cuomo, which, in my opinion, it's rather shocking, actually. I wonder what they're going to say to him because this story is getting a lot of play. The Daily Mail reports, quote, "I don't like what I do professionally. Chris Cuomo has extraordinary meltdown on radio show as he blasts his own CNN job as trafficking in things that I think are ridiculous." Well, I certainly agree with you, Chris. Now, before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you would like to support my work. There's many ways you can give, but the best thing you can do is share this video. YouTube likes to prop up channels like CNN. And as much as their ratings have been doing pretty bad, on YouTube, they get hundreds of millions of views. Because for some reason, YouTube thinks that's what you want. If you want it, then great. Just sit back and let YouTube feed you CNN. But if you do like content like mine, please consider sharing this video. And don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and hit the notification bell if you want to make sure to get more videos from me every day. They say, the CNN anchor, who has been in quarantine while suffering with coronavirus, launched an attack on the hyperpartisanship of the network television and added that I don't like what I do professionally. Cuomo said on his Sirius XM show on Monday that his battle with the disease has made him rethink his values and question his position as a public figure. On his primetime CNN show, the host said he no longer wants to be trafficking in things that I believe are ridiculous. In particular, Cuomo said he found both Democrats and Republicans who went on his show said things they do not actually believe. And I think he's right. He said he disliked talking to Democrats about things I don't really believe they mean, and talking to Republicans about them parroting things they feel they have to say. Cuomo also said He wishes to stop constantly analyzing the president, who we all know is full of S by design. Well, there is some of the similar sentiment we've seen from the Project Veritas videos. People at the network are tired of only ever talking about Donald Trump. Do me a favor. Go to Instagram.com/Timcast after this video, of course, and you can see a couple of videos from me. I've mentioned this in other videos, but what I do is I will turn on Fox News during a major breaking story like protests in Iran or Hong Kong. And then I will flip to CNN, and lo and behold, they're talking about Donald Trump. I did the same thing during a major weather event. Fox News says we've got adverse weather affecting the country. Switch to CNN, Donald Trump. I'd imagine at a certain point, someone would lose their mind and say, I don't want to do this anymore. I didn't sign up for this. These people thought they were going to do journalism. Sorry, that's not the name of the game anymore. According to the New York Times, they're trying to go for the more authentic approach. But I'll tell you what, I, as an individual, Tim Pool, I have opinions. There's things that I think and things I want to say, and I turn the camera on and I say them. It's what I choose to say. It's how I feel. It wouldn't work in a major network when you're going to a bunch of different people with many different opinions and telling them this is the narrative you have to say. Eventually, you'll find people like Chris Cuomo saying, I don't agree. I don't want to talk about this. If you know what you need to do then, CNN, find someone who does. That's why it works for Hannity. That's why it works for Maddow. But it's not going to work at CNN unless you get new staff. The 49-year-old told his listeners, I don't want to spend my time trafficking in things I think are ridiculous. I don't like what I do professionally. I don't think it's worth my time. On March 31st, Cuomo announced that he had tested positive for coronavirus and has since been on lockdown at his Long Island home. Cuomo went on to say he no longer wants to have to tolerate other people's opinions about him due to his public profile. He added, I don't think it's worth it to me because I don't think I'm mean enough. I don't think I matter enough. I don't think I can really change anything. So then what am I really doing? I agree. He said, I'm basically being perceived as successful in a system that I don't value. I'm seen as being good at being on TV and advocating for different positions. But I don't know if I value those things. Certainly not as much as I value being able to live my life on my own terms. You know what he's saying to you right there? He is just saying what they want him to say. And probably, this is why I think they really want to pressure him to go the route of like Rachel Maddow to get those ratings up. And I think he finally snapped and said, I'm not going to do it. I sympathize. I empathize. Now, that's my opinion. I don't know what actually happened with Chris. Maybe at the office, he's just sick and tired of the job and he wants to go fishing. But I've worked for major media companies who told me to side with the audience. I'll tell you the difference between me and Chris. I said no. I was like, I'm not going to do it. Sorry. If you want me to side with the audience, never going to happen. But that's basically the same thing they're saying, that he's kind of, it's how I feel. Like, it's what I think he's trying to insinuate at, that they want him to advocate for positions that he does not value. Yeah, that's one way of putting it. Cuomo then told a story about being approached by a biker who confronted him on Easter Sunday while he was out with his family near the home in Southampton. Now, this I find completely inappropriate. Come on, man. Leave people alone. Don't approach them with their family. That's weird. He added that he wants to be able to act like any other member of the public, and that he told the biker to go to hell. The host said, I don't want some loser, fat tire biker being able to pull over and get in my space and talk BS to me. I don't want to hear it. That matters to me more than making millions of dollars a year, because I've saved my money and I don't need it anymore. I want to be able to tell you to go to hell, to shut your mouth. I don't get that doing what I do for a living. And that's really easy to say, Chris, that you were put in this position. You make some estimates, some websites. I don't know if it's correct information, but they've said he makes $4 million a year. It's really easy to take all that money and then just say what they want you to say until you have enough and then say, well, now I don't have to do it. It's much harder to reject the money on principle. So look, I'm not trying to drag the guy. I appreciate he's coming out and slamming CNN for what they're essentially making him do or what the network produces. I just wish people like him and everyone else would stand up and say, no amount of money is worth selling my principles out. He said, me being able to tell you to shut your mouth or I will do you the way you guys do each other. What does that mean? Here I am in an almost powerless position against this because I'm a celebrity and he's allowed to say whatever he wants to me. Clearly, Chris Cuomo is upset about the Fredo incident where someone came up to him and started yelling at him and called him Fredo. He got mad. He clearly goes on to say, as I mentioned earlier, he doesn't want to talk about Donald Trump. I think there's a lot going on with what he's upset about, but it has to do with being a general public figure. But I want to show you this story from the New York Times, and I want to walk you through the complete collapse of CNN. Well, my opinion on the collapse of CNN. This is a story from the New York Times from Ben Smith. The brothers Cuomo, Andrew and Chris, they ask, in this rather long story, Americans don't trust the media anymore. So why do they trust the Cuomos? Well, without getting into too much, because it talks about their life and what they're doing, I want to show you this passage. The New York Times writes, the old model for authority in public affairs, of course, is a man in a suit and a tie behind a desk. It was appropriated with particular success by Donald Trump on The Apprentice, another Zucker creation, Jeff Zucker being the president, I believe, of CNN. Today, daily White House news briefings often feel like a clumsily produced episode of reality television, a kind of parody of old-fashioned TV seriousness. Meanwhile, Mr. Zucker's CNN is taking TV news in the other direction, toward reality television and Instagram, winning trust through the projection of a rough-cut realness. The Cuomos aren't just feeling your pain, you're feeling theirs. He says news organizations invest heavily to build belief in their brands. That's why CNN calls itself the most trusted name in news. But at a moment when celebrities and social media figures seem to be connecting with Americans better than faceless brands, two brothers who share corny jokes about coronavirus fears are turning the Cuomo name into its own source of trust. You get trust from authenticity and relatability and vulnerability, Mr. Zucker told me. That's what the brothers Cuomo are giving us right now. And that's what CNN wants to produce. You see, on YouTube, you saw the inadvertent rise of authentic content. People who are individuals, people you trust, podcasts where you see someone just hanging out and talking for a couple hours. The content is as long as it needs to be. CNN knows this is the future, so they're trying to appropriate it. But it is inappropriate to do this, to purport to be the most trusted name in news, yet to flood the airwaves with opinion trash. Take a look at this segment. These tweets. Here's what CNN wrote in their Chiron. It's the banner on the bottom of the screen. Trump melts down in angry response to reports he ignored warning. We can see other posts. Trump used task force briefing to try and rewrite history on coronavirus response. Now, in another segment, I basically said someone is really emotional and angry because Donald Trump, he targets them personally as journalists. So they get all flustered and mad and say, oh, I'm going to come for you. I'll get back at you, Donald Trump. Completely inappropriate for news organizations to do. There's another possibility that CNN is trying to be a movie, fiction, reality TV. They want you to get excited watching Trump. They remember how Trump pulled in the ratings at NBC. Jeff Zucker was working there. The Apprentice was a creation of his. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to drive ratings. The ratings have been doing, I don't want to say their ratings are doing very, very well, but I think they're doing better. It's a complicated way to explain this because overall ratings for every network have been going down. But one thing we've heard is that the Trump bump has driven ratings a bit. So CNN is trying to milk it for all it's worth. They're doing these lower third chyrons to make CNN not a news program, but 24-hour reality television. And the New York Times just told us that much. That's the game plan. That's why you see the Cuomo brothers talk about mom and who's the favorite son. It's not news. It's supposed to be authentic. But it's really weird when you have this partisan nonsense. And there's more to the CNN story. You see, I wonder if Cuomo is getting tired of Jim Acosta. I wonder if he's willing to call him out or if he doesn't even care at all. But the fact is, Jim Acosta is the perfect example of CNN's complete collapse. What Jim Acosta represents, I am not surprised to see Chris Cuomo coming out and saying he's sick of it. Take a look at this story. The Atlantic, August 7th, 2018. Jim Acosta's dangerous brand of performance journalism. The CNN reporter is speaking truth to power, but he's also amplifying the president's anti-press campaign. This is sentiment we've heard from many journalists. Jim Acosta of CNN is a spectacle of reality television. He is not giving us new information. Why would anyone want to work for that? It's not real news. I guess if you want to be a part of a reality TV show, hey, go for it. But I certainly imagine there are a lot of old school journalists, young people who went to school for journalism, thinking they were going to do real reporting. And now all of a sudden they're surrounded by reality TV hosts. They claim they're better than Trump, but they're the exact same thing. A media spectacle meant to spark outrage, to generate revenue. That's all they do. We can even see it from ex-CNN producers. An ex-CNN producer says Jim Acosta's Trump skirmishes make all in the press look bad. This guy's basically saying if I didn't know better, I'd say Jim Acosta was working for Trump's reelection because he's a caricature of exactly what Trump says about the press. A guy who grandstands. He gets up, asks questions, talks for several minutes, and everyone rolls their eyes. You see, it's not just people like me who can call it Jim Acosta. There are people at these networks who won't do it. There are journalists who won't do it. Why? Well, in my opinion, I think they're spineless. And there's a reason why I started my own thing and they still work for these big companies. Because when I had the boss come to me and say, here's how we want you to frame things, I said, I'm not going to do it. And ain't nothing going to make me do it. But these people know if they step out of line, they could lose their jobs. Aw, you're going to lose your job. That's too bad. I'm glad you found a number that you're willing to sell your principles for. Take a look at this from the DC Examiner. Even the president of White House Correspondents Association thinks Jim Acosta is a bit much. Yeah, we all know it. I know many journalists who behind the scenes have said bad things about him, but they don't want to call him out because they know that it'll be bad for their future opportunities. Well, I guess when you're set on working for someone else's enterprise, you shouldn't be surprised when you don't get to be a journalist and you just make reality television. But if that's what you want to do, then by all means do it. And if you don't like it and you have scruples, perhaps the money isn't worth it. CNN now is being accused of just parroting press releases from the Chinese military. I mean, are we even going to assume that CNN at this point is real news? I don't think it's fair to say so. I mean, when you look at the things posted by their media reporters, all they do is rag on Fox News. Who cares? Why are you telling me what's on Fox News? I can turn on Fox News. I can see for myself. Why would anyone report this? Imagine if I came on to talk about issues. You came to my channel and all I ever did was talk about someone else's YouTube channel or me. Now, look, I get it. You might say, Tim, that's a paradox. Or that's ironic considering you're talking about CNN and ragging on another media enterprise. Well, this is more about what's supposed to be the most trusted name in news, an organization that hosts presidential debates. I certainly don't do that. They have a massive amount of power. And I think it's important I highlight the problems with what they're doing and why they're doing it and the damage it will cause. There's certainly people in media who are substantially more trustworthy. I'm not a big fan of Sean Hannity. I'm not a big fan of Rachel Maddow. I think Tucker Carlson does a pretty good job. And I think Joe Rogan has some of the most authentic conversations in media. And there's a reason why he's number one. Now, they try to replicate that with CNN. It's not going to fly. And it's not the game they should be playing. CNN probably would do better to just switch to pre-programmed television like they had been doing before. But it's not just CNN. I want to talk to you about trust in media in general. NPR reported this. Bloomberg News says it won't cover owner's presidential campaign or his rivals. This is back in November. Many of you know Michael Bloomberg ran for president, and he basically isolated himself, saying, my news organization will not cover me. People were outraged, saying that's surprising. Your news organization should be independent. Nope. He said no dice. We now know. Bloomberg News kills investigation, fired reporter, then sought to silence the reporter's wife. This is a story that just came out on the 14th. I'm not going to get into all the details. I just want to highlight the problems we're facing in media. The partisanship, the politicking, the activism. I'm sorry, man. You can rag on Trump. You can criticize him. I got no problem with that. But when Trump talks about the media, he's right. Look at how the media smeared Tulsi Gabbard and Bernie Sanders. The Bernie Sanders supporters know it. Maybe you should have been calling this out a long time ago. Certainly many of them were, but maybe more of you should have the entire time. I want to show you this tweet here from James Todaro, an MD. A Tale of Two Drugs by the Washington Post. Both articles refer to studies without randomized control groups. I wonder how the Washington Post decides which drugs are hopeful and which are false hope. In this tweet, James Todaro, I'm not super familiar with who he is. It says MD, so perhaps he's a doctor. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. We see two screenshots. The Washington Post said how false hope spread about hydroxychloroquine to treat COVID-19 and the consequence that follows. The next article says Gilead's experimental drug remdesivir shows hopeful signs in small group of coronavirus patients. Now, why would the Washington Post claim that what I believe is a patented drug from a major pharmaceutical is hopeful and that a generic drug, which is being used by numerous countries, is false hope? Perhaps, as they insinuate, it's because one is a major company that's got sweet loot that can pay for advertising with their patent-controlled medication, and the other is a generic. I'm not going to go that far. I think it's much more simple than that. Donald Trump says hydroxychloroquine, so they say, no, you are always wrong. Because they're not trying to tell you the truth. They're trying to create reality television. They are going to withhold information if it benefits their position. And their position is money. I know a lot of these people, their position is, I guess, partisanship. There's a lot of activists working in media. But I don't think Jim Acosta, for instance, is going after President Trump because he wants Biden to get elected. I think he's doing it because he wants to be famous. His Twitter banner, I guess, is him on Jimmy Kimmel. And he's been called out by other people for performative journalism. And then after he did all his grandstanding, he sold a book. That's what you're getting from mainstream press. I do not believe I'm perfect. I think I have a bias. I'm focused on certain issues. I don't know to tell you other than make sure you get as much information from other sources as you can. I have no interest in misleading you to sell a book. I don't want to do it. I just want to go on my YouTube channel and complain about my feelings. Maybe that makes me better. Maybe that makes me worse. I honestly don't know. But I do think authenticity matters. And I think right now it's getting very, very difficult to navigate what's true and what isn't. And there are still too many people who blindly believe all of these companies, even though we can clearly see they are manipulating you to generate traffic. You can argue the same about me, clickbait headlines, whatever. I'm just one person. I understand. I have a growing channel. I have influence. The same is true for any other podcaster. The difference I see it, the way I see it is, for CNN to use the weight of their hundreds of millions or whatever, however much money they have access to hire people and then say, here's what we're doing, is very different from me, one person, seeing a story and being like, I think that's a bad thing. I'm going to talk about it. Individuals with opinions exist. If that's the case for Hannity and Maddow, then you know what? So what? There you go. They have their opinion shows. I'll criticize them for their opinions I think are bad. In fact, Tucker Carlson said he wouldn't do that to Maddow because she's allowed to have her opinions. He just disagrees with her. And that's a fair point. But when a news organization is supposed to be giving you facts, but instead they purposefully mislead you, don't be surprised when you get this from Gallup. Approval for the news media during the coronavirus pandemic at 44%, where Donald Trump is at 60%. That's right. The bombastic, crude and crass president who just went on, his press briefing and railed on the press has a higher approval rating than the media does. There's a lot of reasons for this. Some say it's because the left thinks the media isn't going hard enough on Trump. Some think it's because, on the right say it's because the media is lying. So the media is in a bad position anyway. I disagree. I think if you're honest in media, you will do just fine. If you don't insult the intelligence of your audience, you will do just fine. We recently saw the New York Times run defense for Joe Biden, removing information because there have been allegations against Joe Biden. They removed it from the story after the fact, and we found out later it's because they said, here's what they said. They said the campaign thought it was confusing or something like that, or it confused the issue. Why does it matter what the campaign thinks? Oh, because the media isn't here to just tell you the truth. They're here to pony up to special interests, be it advertisers, be it politicians, and they want to make that money. Is it possible that Joe Biden says, I won't advertise with you if you make me look bad? Maybe. Donald Trump plays similar games. The point is, when we hear it from Chris Cuomo, who's basically on top at CNN, that he doesn't value this, there's a breakdown coming. The media cannot sustain this absurd hyperpartisan culture war. Not the way the people on the internet can. But I'll tell you one thing. These social media companies that have been banning conservatives, and they have been, well, they made a serious mistake. I was wondering why it is that so many conservatives, moderates, and moderates agree, both, Democratic and Republican moderates. And I think it's because the more fringy elements of the right have been purged completely. And then you look at the left, they've gone insane, and the media just lets them run rampant with their weird lies. Recently, Mike Cernovich documentary Hoaxed was removed from Amazon Prime Instant, the instant, whatever you call it. When you go on Amazon, you can find the hard copy DVD to buy, but they removed it so you can't view it on your, over-the-top devices in your house, your smart TV. Why would they do that? Why is it that there is an allowed media apparatus and there is a disallowed media? Why is it that certain voices on YouTube will be banned outright, on Twitter banned outright, but many people on the left are ignored? I can't tell you other than it's bias, but I'll tell you what the result is. The result is people like Chris Cuomo being pressured to go increasingly insane. Rachel Maddow claiming the Russians are going to turn off your electricity in the winter. Oh, she actually did that. I love bringing that up, by the way. Chris Cuomo can't compete with that because he knows it's insane. And so eventually he just snaps and says, I don't want to do this. And I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to do it either. A lot of people accuse me of being, on the right or of pandering or whatever. Dude, let me tell you something. I know how the game is played. I know that if I came out and gave stupid, extreme opinions and reinforced certain people no matter what they did, I know that I would get substantially more views. I can see the other channels. I can see the views they get, and I'm surprised at how high they rank on Apple Podcasts and how well they do. And you know what? I don't care. If you don't like what I have to say, ain't nothing I can do about it. I'm not going to pretend I don't care. If all of this came crashing down around me, I'm not going to lie, cheat, or steal to try and get more views. I'm going to get in my van, go off to the woods and hang out and smell the flowers. But there are some people who absolutely would lie, cheat, and steal. I'm glad to see that there is a red line for Chris Cuomo, but you can still see many people in media who don't have one. They have no scruples. They just want to make money. They will say whatever needs to be said. They will lie whenever they need to if it benefits them. We've seen it in leaked emails from journalists ponying up to political campaigns. And we've seen it, or we've heard it, from undercover videos from groups like Project Veritas. They know the company is bad. They'll work there anyway. I get it, man. I'm not going to rag on the lower level staff at these companies. People need jobs. But I'll tell you what, maybe start looking for a new one. If you think you are violating your principles, perhaps it's time to stop. That's about it, I guess. We'll see how this plays out with CNN and the rest of the media. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. YouTube.com/TimCastNews. It is a different channel. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you then.